Greetings in the love and in the light of, or greetings in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. I'm Andrii, and I'm here with Ed and Czar, and we'll be discussing distortion catalyst, or surprising phenomena in our experience, and how to deal with them. All right, go ahead, Czar, with the intro.
We call upon the service to others Confederation of Planets to join us with their energies and beingness, helping to guide our thoughts, feelings, words, and actions to give an accurate portrayal of their material. This is a teaching experiment founded on unity, harmony, and unconditional love. The topic covered today is distortions meets catalysts. We are grateful for those who listened to our teaching experiment. We thank those of LL Research who have channeled and continue to channel and produce spiritual information to this day. We thank those entities of the Confederation of Planets in the service of the one infinite creator that provide the information we wish to discuss. We have every intention of staying true to Confederation philosophy. It is our desire to serve through this experiment. We are attempting to learn a topic as a social memory complex. This means we desire and have the goal to teach a topic as a unified and harmonious group. At this point, we wish to make it clear that we are not experts or authorities on any such topic we cover, and we are not infallible on what we have to say. We would ask that you use your own discrimination to determine whether the words and concepts we share with you have value in your spiritual journey at this time. If there are any that do not, we would ask you to lay them aside and think not a second thought about them, and use only those words and concepts that speak to your heart, that speak to your journey that you are on now, as we do not wish to be a stumbling block in your seeking. Thank you for watching. We will start with Czar, myself, on the topic of distortions meet catalysts.
You got a quote?
I like to begin with passages that seem to define the terms we're talking about. So this is from Aaron in September 26, 1993. Speaking to the particular distortions and confusions that offer themselves as catalysts in your lives, we come together here with a number of religious biases. I do not mean bias in a negative term, only in the sense of persuasions or beliefs. A bias might be considered a bend in the clear stream of light, such as that bend that light makes when it hits the water, being bent by the mass of that water so it appears to the eye to have a crook in it. Your individual values, experiences, and beliefs serve as deflector to the true light, so that the expression of that light becomes individuated into your own personal bias. So, what I take from this quote is describing how distortions are very much like the lens, belief, and personality through which we view the world. And these particular views from which we view the world offer themselves to us as catalysts, so that the catalysts that we actually take depend a lot on our particular belief system or religious values. And how we respond to this sort of is part of our individuation as like an entity, and will alter the way that we shine our light.
Nice. Ed, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really beautiful statement, kind of summing up the whole thing as well. I mean, like the whole way I understand distortions in whichever way they're described in the law of one, it's something that essentially gives you separation from oneness, from the light, from what we should be. You know, so distortions away from that is essentially what it's talking about. You know, you've got the pure light of the creator, it hits the surface of the water, being us, and then it diffracts, giving us, you know, a prism effect of all of the different, you know, elements that go to make us up. And then that essentially creates the biases that we have in our lives that then essentially lead how we react to catalyst, you know, and how the things that we have to overcome as we, you know, move through life, dealing with the catalysts, and obviously the types of catalysts that we all resonate with and that we have to get over to learn from.
Yeah, that's great summary. And so it's totally accurate. And I just also wanted to add that catalyst is kind of any phenomenon, either that we can think, feel, or touch, and or smell, whatever sense, and so also with these distortions, the distortions that we have in our biases, and also other people have their own distortions and their own biases, and so two people can experience the same catalyst, and then it goes through their distorted views, or their own lenses, and then one person can tell their distorted view to another person with their own distortion, and that creates another catalyst, and so that's what I was calling as like distortion catalyst. Yeah. So Ed, did you have a quote you wanted to
Yeah,
do?
go on. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So this, I think, really kind of like leads to why it's so important to kind of recognize catalyst, and why your own distortions kind of should guide you kind of how you are. So it's only a small one. It's from the Ra channel, and so it's Ra session 54, and it's thus the less developed entity will perceive the catalyst about it in terms of survival of the physical complex, with the distortions which are preferred. The more conscious entity, being conscious of the catalytic process, will begin to transform the catalyst offered by the sublogos into catalyst which may act upon the higher energy nexi. So I really like this one because I think it kind of shows the metaphysical in your life kind of part of how this whole works. So the if you don't really understand spirituality, if you're an atheist, if you're not really in contact with any kind of, if you haven't kind of woken up in any way, which is, a lot of people are like, I was I went down that path myself for a while, kind of, it's easily done for people. But the point is, it says here that if you're like that, then you perceive all of the catalysts that come your way in terms of how it affects your life. Is it going to affect your body? Is it going to hurt you? Is it going to mess up the things that how does he put it? The things which are preferred, the peace in your life, the house, all the stuff, the materialistic stuff. So when you get catalyst, you'll be kind of really upset and angered, and whatever, emotional, whatever, because you'll think that it's about about you essentially. But then when you actually kind of understand who you are and what we're doing here, then essentially you understand that all these hardships you go through, suffering, pain, any of the distortions that lead you away from this sense of oneness, that they're just catalytic events, that they're designed to essentially hone and sharpen who you are as an entity, so that you can spiritually progress. So like it says here, that you've got the transform the catalyst open, offered by sublogos, being, I suppose, us as well. The other people, and all of the things in your life, to then like realization that they're catalyst, and actually processing them properly. You actually move from those lower energy centers of kind of the real world up into the higher spiritual energy centers, where you're actually doing the kind of shadow work, and you're doing the inner work to essentially progress past whatever these hardships may be, with love and faith and all of the other things that the law of one says is how we should deal with these things. Anyway, that's my quote.
Zar, did you have a comment on that?
I suppose not much. It makes sense that we can choose how to interpret different catalysts and where to work with them. As the quote says, do I just view something as a threat to my survival and then I respond to this and gain some safety, or do I look at how to look at this from a place of universal love and honesty, and work in my whole energy system to responding to this catalyst?
Yeah, I think that's good point of how these distortions kind of funnel into polarity, in terms of say, for instance, if you are a person who is polarized service to self, then whatever catalyst you have, you're going to distort it into a way that it is of service to yourself. And then if you're service to others, whatever catalyst you have, you're going to try to distort it into a way that it's of service to others.
That's Oh, sorry.
Well, go ahead. No, that's
Yeah, like
great to hear your reactions.
that's a very good like connecting point of the catalyst. Like if someone is very into like maybe some US two-party system, maybe I will put all catalysts into like how does this play into like the left versus right political battle, or like the situation comes up, just how do I control this situation and like solve and manage it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or,
Well, so that's like, I think there's also that neutral way, right? Distorting it in a neutral way, which is kind of like going with the mainstream narrative. It's like, how can I make this fit the mainstream narrative? That would be doing the neutral way. Well, one of the ways of being neutral. And then and if in your example with the two-party system, or like say Russia and Ukraine, I like to say I am on the side of God, of forgiveness, love, kindness, and compassion, and peace. So whenever either side does any motion towards peace, love, kindness, forgiveness, compassion, I'm like, yes, that's good. And whenever either side goes towards fear, anger, aggression, or then I'm like, no, that's bad. And so it's you don't have to pick a side in that sense. You can pick God, or one infinite creator, and
yeah.
helping everybody go up rather than side to side.
Yeah, this
The
will
thing
really
is, when
like,
you talk about a political system like that, there's always going to be a separation and a distortion between the political views. Realistically, there shouldn't be. We should be breaking down those barriers and realization of what is best for the whole in terms of oneness, instead of everything being based on greed and everyone having their own separations and distortions, trying to kind of control it in what they want rather than what the creator would want. What we all know we should be doing, but the system doesn't let us.
Right. Well, the yellow ray aspect was like everything for my party, and then the other yellow ray is like everything for my party,
yeah.
and then the green ray would be let's have enough for everybody.
Yeah, and like in the war situation that comes up a lot, where it's like, oh, they're executing some people of the other side. Now we're going to use this catalyst to like further solidify our cheering for their deaths. Whereas with the green ray perspective, you will interpret the catalyst very differently.
Yeah, and the green ray perspective, that's bad. You don't want to be killing or harming
Whoever
anybody.
Is doing it, that's bad.
Doesn't matter who's winning. You're both bad guys. You're both losing.
Yeah, basically. Anyways, I'll try to get back to the topic here. So,
Yeah.
2021-02-19. We find that so often the stumbling blocks upon the spiritual path include the internal distortion of resistance to that which is, and this resistance can become a perpetuating cycle as the seeker is met with a difficult situation, a persisting theme, or a general unpleasant experience in their lives. And aversion causes the seeker to fight against this experience in order to vanquish it. And yet, we find this approach, when lacking the love of acceptance generates a metaphysical charge that will, in many cases, perpetuate and even increase the intensity of the catalyst which is fought. So, the first approach described within the query, that of surrendering, may, in a moment, be that which the seeker needs the most, and in that moment is the extent of a spiritual approach that can be taken to then release the charge of perpetuating catalyst, thus allowing the seeker to accept the catalyst and utilize it for their spiritual growth. So I think this really ties in well with what we were just talking about, because it talks about fighting. And so there's this distortion of resistance, and this like the aversion where, like, say the Ukrainian side is fighting against, well say the Russian side had this aversion to NATO or whatever, and invaded, and then the Ukrainian side has this aversion to Russian people, and so they're having all of this fighting, and but they're like, oh, we're gonna fight them and we're gonna defeat them, but what it's actually doing is just escalating the conflict, and that's what they're saying here. When it's lacking the love of acceptance, generates a metaphysical charge that will perpetuate and even increase the intensity of the catalyst which is fought. And so that's exactly what's happening. So the more there's fighting, the more fighting it is. this. You can't end fighting by fighting. The only way to end it is through peace, love, acceptance, learning to be kind to each other. And that's what it's saying here. The spiritual approach to release the charge of perpetuating catalyst is through surrendering. And so in this context, it would be, surrendering to, let's have some kind of resolution where we can both be happy, and like focus on that. Mm-hmm. All right. So either of you have any comments on that?
Yeah.
Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, well, once again, that whole kind of idea of fighting against the flow, as it were. The catalyst, once it's engaged, once it's coming towards you and it's in your life, you have to kind of acknowledge it, and you have to work through whatever it's offering you, whatever lesson needs to be understood inside that part of your life. So, the fighting against it, saying, no, I will not do this. I'm not going to learn the lesson. No. It will just intensify the catalyst until you learn the lesson. No matter how far you fight against it, it's like that whole thing of going against a river. You can keep going against it, but the flow of the water will keep pushing you back until you just accept the position in the water, and work with it rather than against it. Until you get into that situation, the catalyst will just keep increasing. So once again, surrender being not giving up, not like, oh no, oh whatever, put my hands up, but understanding why it's there, understanding what it is, and how you've got to deal with it. The whole idea of love and compassion being the answer to every situation. Anything negative comes towards you, push love towards it. Understand that it's there to help, even if it is painful. And as soon as you start doing that, the catalyst itself will subside. You won't need it as much, right? I've had positions in my life where people have upset me and whatever else, and normally I'd be sitting there all angry at them and think about it in my head. But I found that if you literally as soon as you start finding that in your head that you're angry about them, just stop thinking that and just beam love at them. Just literally focus my love and intention at them. Instead of thinking bad things and horrible things and trying to kind of fight my way through it, no, surrender, accept, compassion, forgiveness, moving forwards, beam love at them. And I'm sorry, but 9 times out of 10, I feel far better from the acceptance and beaming love at the situation than I ever do from fighting against it. And so, yeah, I think once again, it perfectly explains how we can utilize these inside our lives. So, yeah, it's another good quote.
Czar?
Oh, I think yesterday I attended a personal defense workshop, and there was a lot of focus on trying to learn to assert boundaries and deal with catalysts or threats quickly before they escalate. However, it might be the interpretation that once there is a seriously dangerous threat, say to me and my family, it might actually be best to surrender to the need to defend myself physically before it gets worse. If some attacker gets right up next to me, there's very little I can do to defend myself. If I surrender to the need, okay, this is actually a situation where my family will be slaughtered if I don't take arms. Surrendering to that quickly, I might sort of reduce the situation more than if I resisted taking physical defense because I want things to end in peace. So I think it can get complicated, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's also another option that I know is doing that love and acceptance. So say for instance you see someone and they look really angry and aggressive and they're coming at you, and if you have, it's just like a predator. If you have a fear response and you look frightened and like you're gonna run away, you're just gonna antagonize that predatory behavior. But if you're standing there and you're calm and you're comfortable and you're beaming at them with love, you're like, hey, I see you, I see the divine within you, and I love you, and it's like, this is probably someone that's in a lot of pain. They're making all those weird faces. It's because they're in pain on the inside, And oftentimes, like in my life, I know, like I've been surrounded by like gangs or whatever, and they were like, they wanted me to join their gang and attack the police and stuff. And I was like, do you know about Jesus? And they're like, yeah, we know about Jesus. Tell us about Jesus. So it's just like, is that love and acceptance, and then we did a loving kindness meditation together. And then like we talked through all of the ways to forgive and love the police. And then like we baptized ourselves in the water because we were next to the lake. And so there's many different opportunities for how to interact with people. And like, it doesn't need to lead to an escalation. It doesn't need to lead to physical violence. You can de-escalate. You can give that person that love and that kindness to help them feel good. Like with the, if we were taking it back to that Ukraine and Russia situation, like some of it was like, oh, we don't like you, we don't want Russia ruling that portion because they have they don't like human rights. They have very bad human rights record. But what's happening now is that now Ukraine has a bad human rights record. It's like, well, that's not improving the situation at all. It's wartime, so we have to remove these human rights. But it's like, what's the point of fighting if the problem was the lack of human rights over there? Let's instead let's set a good example of human rights. Let's set a good example in Ukraine for honoring people's free will to be passive and not have to participate. In all of the fighting. You don't need to abduct people off the streets. Just let them live their lives, and give them enough land to grow their own food.
This sounds like this like noble warrior archetype that I've seen, where it's like, even if one is protecting oneself or one's people, one still wants to do it from a place of calm love, where it's like, yes, I love you, and I really hope that we do not escalate. If you attack me, I will defend myself. However, I really hope it doesn't come like to that. I'm not responding in fear. And yeah, that would be miraculous, fighting a war while trying to show an example of like how to fight a war while loving the people.
Yeah.
Whoever the people are.
Yeah. And at all times, like loving the other side too, like loving Putin and Prigozhin and whoever else, and being like, I see the divine within you too. Let's have some peace. There's reasonable ways that we can go about this. We can be kind to each other. And then like, if you just maintain this, then at some point, they may go from, completely unreasonable terms to like something that's like, what, I could work with this person. This person has been consistently nice to me, even when I was terrible to them. So how about we do some peace? Right.
I got a great idea. What we need to do is we just need to kind of get like an unbelievable amount of some kind of hallucinogen and just carpet bomb the entire region until they all have an incredible sense of oneness and don't want to shoot at each other.
That would be interesting. All right. Zar, did you have a quote?
Sure. Let's see. Okay, I will do a quote from Quo in August 9, 2002. So, many times the reason for distortion is some opinion concerning the self that is negative. Sometimes the self interprets catalyst to mean that it has been abandoned. Sometimes an entity may interpret catalyst in such a way that he feels that he is not good enough. Whatever the negative perception concerning the self, such perception robs the self of its own peace, talent, and magic. If an entity is not pleased with itself, if an entity does not feel that it is doing well, it is simply by this attitude hampered in the accurate determination of the nature of catalyst, because all negative perception tightens a net of fear about the soul, and within that net, the soul within cannot breathe and cannot express itself with freedom and accuracy. It is only within an atmosphere of love that the self begins to be able to see the self clearly. So I like how this talks about how negative self-views rob one of peace and being able to even accurately perceive the situation and what the challenges that one faces really are. So then this distortion makes it harder to process the catalyst. And like the atmosphere of love reduces distortions to accurate like discrimination. It's like I think this is especially relevant in the previous conversation where like if one can respond to an aggressor with love, even if one concludes that some degree of physical protection is best, one is probably going to make a much more accurate judgment of this if approaching it from a place of love. Like if I approach the hooligans with love, maybe I can see what is their actual intent. Are they just wildly going for something and this can focus elsewhere? And probably in the case of war, one can have a much more accurate discernment as to the nature of one's opponents and what their actual needs are if one is not wrapped up in fear and demonizing them, but is approaching them with like firm love.
Yeah, I completely agree. I know that was one of my suggestions to the police a few years back when there was like the Dalai Lama peace talks, and then I did my own version of the answers to them, and one of them was like, if you really want to understand the other person, you have to forgive and love them unconditionally, and then you become, you remote view the world from their perspective. And when you forgive and love them unconditionally, you understand why they're doing what they're doing, and then you could easily predict. It's like, well, this is why they're doing it, and so I know what they're going to do next. But you have to get to that point first. And it's just like fifth density, of light and wisdom only happens after you completely learn fourth density, which is all about forgiving and loving other beings and yourself. So only after you've forgiven and loved yourself and all beings completely are you even able to know anything for certain.
I think something that really ties into that with this quote as well is the ability to open the kind of third eye chakra, like that ability to kind of know that you're worthy, to know that you are the creator, to be able to kind of cycle up and get those energies working. Toxic comments like it says about kind of like putting you down and making yourself feel like you're not worthy, like you're broken, you're like less than, these things that hurt you at a kind of personal level, that really breaks down it causes distortions of that understanding. So then you, when you try to kind of open yourself up and you try to channel these energies and you try to connect to something bigger, the things that are standing in your way are your views on yourself that are all caused by those distortions, the catalyst caused by other people's opinion and the things that they say to you. So like, I think that's really good. Also back to the kind of the war thing, I think this is also like really ties in with Hermetics quite well. The whole idea that you've got, on the positive polarity, you've got Jupiter as in like protection and mercy. And then on the other side, you've got Mars, which is like war and like a severity, so you've got the positive and negative polarities along the same archetypal behavior, being Jupiter being the protector that, like you were saying, you would react to protect your family, and you would make that conscious action. You'd be doing it out of love for your family. You would also know that you didn't want to hurt this other self, but your actions towards them would be out of love. Yeah, they have brought their distortions, the thinking that they are allowed to do this behavior. That whatever they're supposed to learn by doing this, even if they kill you, you are then providing catalyst. You are being of service. Yeah, whichever way this plays out, your distortions are providing catalyst for them to learn, or vice versa. How you react in that situation will come down to your own distortions, your own biases. And then the things that you would have to have learned, you'll learn in those few seconds when you react. Like that, all of those things. That's how the whole thing works. How you respond to these catalysts and get over them. And that's once again the same kind of like the same choice, the same action. If it's positive, then you're the protector. If it's negative, then you're the warmonger. That's the same kind of polarities that Ra talks bellicose action. Like not approaching bellicose action is all of these things that we're talking about, and the opposite side of that, is the protecting against that. Like the doing like maybe physically violent things to protect. Can that be positive action ever? Who knows? Yeah, Hermetic says yes, but
yeah, I like how you point out that when, even if protecting in love, it's possible to make mistakes in judgment, which is different from protecting out of fear and causing harm as a warmonger, yet this still gives birth to new catalysts for growth on all sides.
It's a perfect system, really.
And certainly it is possible to protect with love. Like they mentioned, there was another quote, like if you have all of your lower, up to your green ray open and your blue ray open, then it is possible to what do you call it? With the wisdom, to kill in a reasonable sense. Like say for instance, there's like the example Ed was giving, someone that just doesn't know any better, and so that they're going around, serial killing people, and they're just like, why won't anyone stop me? and then if you stop them, then you're actually doing a service to everybody. so Ed,
sounds, yeah. No, it sounds like.
Sorry, go.
Yeah, go on.
No, don't. I've got another quote. So if you've got something,
Ed will have a quote after your statements are.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it sounds like with increased development, like spiritual development, one does seem to gain more and more wisdom and skill at finding non-physically violent ways to protect and avoid conflict.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, that's the whole Jupiter path. The mercy. In everything.
Yep. All right.
Okay, so the quote that I was going to do, it's 2022, 11:26. Each has this ability to utilize any catalyst of difficulties and distortions that one may experience upon the spiritual path. This is the means by which one such may gain understanding and reunification with that spiritual journey that one is on at all times. So, I think that this kind of shows how important all of these things are. We're all on our own path. We all have our own free will, our own choice, whatever else. But there is a best way of doing it. How did Ra put it the other week? Is the most efficient path to harvest. So the ability to utilize the catalyst in your life is important. When these things happen to you, they're happening for a reason. They're happening to cause some kind of fundamental change, to polarize or to remove distortions and to kind of undistort, so that you have a better understanding of love and connection to oneness, right? So the ability to use the catalyst that's provided by anything that goes wrong in your life, any of the distortions given by other people, the things that you've got inside yourself, is essentially the main way that you're going to actually understand what your spiritual path is, and the main way that you're going to reunify and connect back up to what you should be doing. So anything that goes wrong, it might be horrible at the time, like the Shadow Guru says, you obviously you get angry for that brief second, but how you react, your actions, what you do in reaction to that is the outward important action, service. So that by understanding that these things that happen to you, they might be horrible, they might make you really, really angry, but through understanding, forgiveness, compassion, and moving past all the negatives and realizing that it's catalyst and it's there for a reason, and understanding that reason is important to you in your life. So remove the fact that it's horrible and it's painful and it's rubbish. Yes, get over that and realize why. What did you need to learn from that experience? Because I found it that you won't really fully understand some of these things until years later. 2 years later, you might look back and be like, Jesus, that's why that happened. That needed to happen. Sorry, I got animated.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, that's my thoughts on it. You guys?
Zard.
Oh. Yeah, I think this is a beautiful idea. Is like, while everything is potentially a resource for growth, that which is a catalyst for growth, in a sense, triggers me, pointing me to some aspect of my being that is like out of harmony with the way things are. So like, if I was in full union with this aspect of creation, it would not trigger me and be a catalyst. So then, like, by definition, as a catalyst, it is pointing me to something in myself and the world where there is some disharmonious elements require additional processing and digestion to understand at a deeper level.
Yeah, for sure. Like, yeah, a lot of the times when we have like our they say like people often react in fear and anger, but if you give yourself a little time to like wait and meditate and then let that reach its maximum, its zenith, and then like try to push it a little further, and then like fill that with love and kindness, like it's kind of like a bubble, and fill that with the same size bubble, and then you've processed your catalyst, and then you can move on, and it doesn't have to repeat itself anymore.
And that's kind of important, when you think
Mhm.
about kind of like mental health terms, like therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy, things like that. When you understand the things that drive your reactions, the drivers and the triggers that make you have your episodes or whatever it is, by understanding those, you kind of move past them. Really, you could say that process just makes you understand your own distortions, and then by doing that, you can then analyze the catalysts that come to you. In psychological terms, you would be talking about your drivers and your triggers being the things that are inside you that are driving your actions, the things that you think, your biases, as it's been described, and then the catalyst being the outside thing that trigger how you react. So, by understanding yourself, you avoid these, mental illness episodes, which is, it's another thing that's been spoken about in here, like, that the not understanding the distortions and not reacting to the catalyst is what leads to loads of physical and mental distortions. As you move on, your body and your mind is affected by the fact that you haven't dealt with this catalyst. And those are the things that kind of drive the spiritual path, like I said. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. So I want to do my next quote here. It's 2021-09-22. This awareness of the distortion developed by an upbringing within a distorted society became ever more important. For an individual may balance the self and clear the self of distortions to a certain degree, and an entity may seem to be balanced and move with ease about the society, offering service where it is requested. Yet there is ever difficult process of examining those things which are nearly universally agreed upon within a society, determining whether or not these aspects of society that have seeped into the heart of the self are in alignment with the chosen path of service to others or even service to self. And if these deep seated, widely accepted distortions do not match with the seeker's chosen vibration, then the seeker accepts the responsibility for the society and will begin to generate catalyst for the self that calls the attention more and more to that which will put it at odds with society. And this one also really resonated with me, like with the Ukraine war situation, in that the universally agreed upon distortion is that people should be supporting Ukraine in the war, and or they should be supporting Russia. But I have what do you call it? That does not match with my chosen vibration of service to others, because neither supporting war is not service to others. And so I accept the responsibility for society and generate my own catalyst of let's have peace, let's have human rights, let's be kind to each other, let's end conscription, and that does put me at odds with a lot of people in Ukraine and in Russia and in the West, like that I interact with, because it's not the common distortion of society.
Yeah, like it sounds like there's a suggestion that if my values put me at odds with society, like I am on the side of humanity and life in the universe rather than Ukraine and Russia, but if I'm not super clear about that internally, I might see like increasing friction and catalyst to get stronger between society's view that I need to take sides and my own view, until like these catalysts nudge me to finally being like, yes, I am actually clearly on this side now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's certainly a level of testing that occurs. It seems Ed is gone for a bit. I don't. Did you want to do another quote for now then?
Well, Sure.
Okay.
So this is Hatan from March 5, 2016.
Okay.
The quote is, I am Hatan and am aware of your query, my sister. We find that in the healing process, we look upon the body as the creature of the mind that has expressed symptoms that you may call disease or distortions that exist because the mind itself has not been able to successfully process catalyst. When the mind has not achieved this processing of catalyst, then it is that the catalyst is given to the body complex in a symbolic form, with the hope that this form of disease, as you would call it, may attract the attention of the mind to notice this catalyst in another form because it was missed the first time around. So this sounds like one example of a process where a catalyst that is not processed can escalate and become stronger because it's in need of attention. And
Yeah.
I wonder if possibly this can manifest in the mental or spiritual realm as well, complexes as well as the body complex, where some distortion just magnifies more and more to get attention because it's not noticed what we're seeing originally.
Wow. And yeah, it's kind of similar to that quote that I read earlier about how if people resist the catalyst, then it just gets stronger.
Yeah, and sometimes the resistance can manifest in some bodily ailments and
Disease.
disconfigurations.
Yeah, if people don't deal with it, I think I have, or I used to, anyways. But yeah, that's definitely one of the things is that when people don't deal with catalyst, it mounts up, like you say, and then often it either repeats itself or it turns into disease, which is another form of repeating itself because if a person becomes completely overloaded with catalyst, then they die. And so, yeah, that's kind of like also how I think about this situation with the war and all, is that a lot of these people are just they have all of this anger against this other people that they haven't processed, and then they just get to a point where they become deceased. But anyways, Ed, you're finally back. You have to unmute.
Ever so sorry about that. My phone was going to run out of battery and the charger was inside.
Okay.
I do apologise.
Okay.
Well, we were talking about when I left. We were talking about the one with the
society's distortion.
Society's distortion.
Yeah.
Now I feel like that one's really kind of relevant to people who are kind of like on the kind of the fringes. For me, that kind of really resonates in a way of I don't really agree with money. I don't really agree with the kind of greed way that society's run. I don't really agree with kind of like a lot of what a lot of people see as important in their lives, and I don't really agree with the way that society kind of leads them down the wrong path. I don't really agree with lots of the ways that lots of things are done. I don't really agree with how science is done now. I'm a scientist. There's so many of these things that kind of like I don't resonate with inside society, so I just kind of essentially move away from them. I don't use them in the way that I did. I don't trust them the way they did, and I don't really kind of interact them in a societal way that anymore. So I kind of feel that anyone that's on a spiritual path, anyone that is kind of seeking, and taking the stuff seriously, you can't look at society in the same way again. Like the way that punishment works, in every single way that you look at it is against the law of one. Anything that takes away somebody's freedom is worse than whatever crime they could have done. It's the whole way that all of it works doesn't work at all in the context of which we kind of are understanding things. So then when you start looking at that, all of this stuff starts to fall away. All of society becomes something you want to get away from. I've tried to do that myself. Just literally go out into the countryside, build a little shack and live there. Forget about the rest of it. Forget about money. Forget about all the silly TV programming. Lose it all. Anyway, so that's my take on that one. I don't know if I missed another one in the meantime, but yes.
Yeah. Czar had one on about mounting catalyst. If you don't process it, it gets stronger.
Yeah, that's the
Um,
same thing that we were talking about before, and then kind of
Yeah.
leading to the actual bodily distortions that
Mhm.
then
Disease, yes,
manifest in diseases or mental illness, or or like you said, it can actually just kill you.
right. And
Yeah,
I
it
was,
was one of those quotes.
yeah, I wanted to integrate this with YouTube listener Anders says, "Are there strategies for replacing Catalyst with another way of spiritual growth?" I think the answer is unfortunately no. Catalyst is the only way, or
even
processing
if
Catalyst is the
even
only
if you
way.
did, it would still require some kind of catalyst. You'd still
Yeah,
need something to interact with in order to change. You
yes.
Yeah,
can call it whatever you want. You can name it anything you want. But
yeah,
Mhm.
realistically, that's what it comes down to. You are interacting with something that you have got to learn from and change, and go past these things that are built into you. Like you could call it genetics and trying to kind of be a better person in a Platonian way. Like there's lots of ways of defining it, but it's going to be the same process and it's going to require the same actions.
yeah. My understanding is that catalyst is a very generic term in terms of like any experience that sort of catalyzes growth within a system. So you like I've started keeping a trigger journal lately, which could probably be relabeled a catalyst journal, as it's focusing on what triggers me, and so it's
Yeah,
very general, and you could probably reframe it into other terms for your own spiritual process that will be roughly equivalent.
yeah. Basically, a catalyst is any thought, feeling, word, or action. It's like, can you have spiritual growth without thoughts, feelings, words, or actions? I don't think you can have an experience without those things. But having knowing that you can process catalyst really helps with spiritual growth. And then they have a related question: is aging and death a catalyst? I think it is from a bigger cosmic perspective. Yes, it is. It is both a catalyst and it is also a side effect of not processing catalyst. So if we don't process catalyst, then we age, especially prematurely. Like people who have a lot of traumatic events that they didn't manage to process at the time often have gray hair, even in their 20s or their 30s. But if you learn how to process it either through fear, anger, control, because you're some kind of service to self person, or if you do it through forgiveness, love, and acceptance, then you can keep a youthful face and hair and like for much longer. And like there's people that are like old in terms of years, but they look young, and they're usually pretty happy people. And it's because they're processing catalyst well. Yeah. All right. So Ed, did you have another quote you wanted to do?
Well, I was actually going to say, I was going to mention on the
Oh, okay, go ahead.
about that as well, the aging thing. Like where with the quote says about how kind of you, with your thoughts you create the world, right? With what you interact with, what you kind of think, and what you like understand inside yourself creates the kind of catalyst around you, right? So if you're thinking about being old, if you're thinking about like how fast you're aging, and you worry about that, then it's far more likely to happen than if you think that you're young, if you think that these things aren't going to affect you, that you are going to live for a lot longer, and that these things aren't anything that you'd ever need to worry about. Then realistically, I think that attitude will do you a lot better for kind of keeping you young than diving onto the catalyst of uh, 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 you know um, uh, worrying about those things, and actually kind of like manifesting it by the way that you think about it. But obviously, we are here for a limited time period. Quo often mentions that you have to kind of really embrace the incarnation, because it's only a limited time, and that's what makes it important. So aging and death and all these things are vital to the process in themselves.
So we have another discussion point here in the chat. Anders was saying, I thought catalyst is only negative events. Good point. They can be thought of as good. And someone else says negative events may be more likely to inspire one to change, cause more frictions in one life, chasing the carrot. And so I just wanted to kind of like expand on this in that basically catalysts are surprising. They're not necessarily negative. It's like the Confederation says there are no mistakes, they're only surprises. And that's why I said dealing with surprises, because it's not dealing with mistakes or dealing with bad stuff. It's dealing with surprises. And because like if you're on the path of sorrow, which is the path of wanting everything. So basically, the path of sorrow is when a person, instead of going towards joy or towards God, they just get to a place of contentment where they're satisfied with the way the things are. And then something changes, and that's a surprise. And because they're clinging to the way things are, that upsets them, and they see that as a negative something. And so that's why it's called the path of sorrow, because oftentimes only through trauma and bad things happening to them, or changes happening that they don't want because they're clinging so hard, that any kind of changes happen and they're like, no, and so it's a very painful way of life. And like the path of joy instead is realizing that everything is temporary, everything is in flux, and so everything is lost. You can only appreciate it for that little bit of time where it's right now in the present moment. It's like you have a child, you have a wife, you know what, they're going to be a day older tomorrow. You gotta enjoy them now. They're going to look different, they're going to act different. Like, love them now. And then like joy for the present, and then looking at the future. What is God bringing you in the future? And the analogy I like to bring is the surfboard. So you're on the surfboard, and the waves are rolling, right? If you're on the path of sorrow, you're looking behind you and you're like, oh no, I'm on the downstream. Oh no, I've got to get back up this wave, and then you're in the water, and there's water in your face, and you're swallowing water, and you're coughing it up, and it's a really painful experience. That's not how you should be surfing. Oh, the other option is the path of joy. You're on the surfboard, you're looking, you're on the wave. Okay, it's on the decline now, but there's another up over there. I'm getting ready, and then you're surfing on the waves. That's the path of joy.
Yeah, like there's a good passage by Quo discussing how there is a path of spiritual development with joy and unity with the Creator, where one doesn't actually need negative catalyst for growth anymore, because anything less than this full-on joy of union with the Creator is seen as not being there. So one is surfing through joy towards this greater joy.
We'll get there.
Mm-hmm. So I had one last quote I wanted to do, and then we should really move on to the consensus, if that's all right. Unless you guys want to 2022-03-23. This, we understand, is not a simple or easy task upon your planet. It is designed within third density that you must, in order to grow in a spiritual sense, interact with a multitude of other selves, each with their own unique set of distortions. And we understand that to share a message of peace and love in all situations may be seen even controversial. To your peers, the message of peace may seem illogical when the potential for harm or destruction appears imminent. We may not offer a solution to this third density logic, may we say, for that is the task of the third density entity to sort out. But we may say that in an attempt to solve the conundrum of offering peace in opposition to bellicosity, when bellicosity seemingly overcomes peace, that to dedicate oneself so wholeheartedly to peace and to join others in this distortion widens the pathway of inspiration and manifests a certain light that can act as a catalyst that transforms not only the self, but has a great potential to transform the aggressor and to transform those who have dug in and dedicated themselves to division in imposing their control upon the world. So I just think that's really powerful, and basically I really like that just wholeheartedly being for peace, and it is widening the path of inspiration for other people to also be on that path of peace, and it transforms not only me, but it also has the potential to transform the aggressor and those who are trying to create chaos through division. Like one example is during the recent attack or the counter coup or whatever of Prigozhin when he was going towards Moscow and stuff like that. And then I don't know if it was at all related, but I had been very active on Twitter at that time, and I was saying how the best thing to do would be to do a forgiveness and compassion approach, and that by having the succession crisis wouldn't help. But anyways, Putin chose the forgiveness and compassion route. so so it opened that door of forgiveness and love, and then I what do you call it, gave responses to all the detractors, and I gave, because some people were like, no, we need to be cruel, we need to be firm and strict, and I gave the example. It's like, okay, what is a better father? Okay, a father that beats and kills their children, or a father that forgives when they make surprises, or a father that forgives and loves their children and helps them learn from their surprises. And they're like, okay, fine. Actually, they said no, but he didn't, or what do you call it, they tried to deny the fact that he forgave and loved and was the good father. And so anyway, so the good father is the better father. I'd say the one that loves their children. Mm-hmm. So anyways, yeah, we were talking about maximum lifespan 900 years, probably one. Okay, and then fourth density, it's 90,000 years. Yeah. Okay, well, but we'll talk about lifetimes in a different episode. Let's do the consensus. Okay, Czar, do you want to start?
I was going to say about
right?
that.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Ed.
The last one about the kind of peace. I think the main thing that people kind of have a problem with is that we as human beings are quite angry little animals. It's very, very easy for somebody who doesn't follow a path of peace and does have bellicose action to take advantage of, or to dominate, or to control, or whatever else, from an outside perspective. But the whole point of the law of one is the social memory complex, us evolving as a species to be, all of us, be better. And once we start getting to that point where there's a vast majority of us that are better, and that doesn't mean that we're not going to Jupiter and protect, but that we none of us want that action, that no governments are going to be able to do that, because no people will support it. Once we start getting to that point, and the actual aggressive action of human beings is kind of limited by how more spiritually advanced we've become. I think that this view will become obvious to everybody. It's only the kind of fear of people that would take advantage of those situations that are still around now. We are still kind of 10 into third density, experience kind of like issues. But that doesn't mean that everyone can't already start having that opinion in themselves, and can't actually living that way, and trying to make it everybody. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just got 2 minutes left.
Let's
so
go.
If
would you like to summarize?
Yeah, summarize. 30 seconds.
So
who's going first?
Okay, so
Czar.
So in summary, distortions are our individual views and values through which we understand the world, and catalysts are like triggers that are out of line with our expectations of the world, or union with the one infinite creator. And how we process these depends a lot on our distortions. And when we don't process them, this can lead to exaggerated manifestations in the body, or mind, or spirit complexes.
Nice. Ed? You got on mute.
I would only add, that everyone kind of that is following this path should be paying attention for them, and trying to understand things in a more kind of, I don't know, Jung philosophy. Look at why these things have happened, not be upset about what's happened. Realize that your distortions are the ego and things that make you you, and the catalysts are there to help you overcome that, to become better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. Yeah, I agree with all that. And I would just add that, on the service to others path, we process our catalyst through forgiveness, love, and acceptance, especially meditation. And that distortion catalyst is kind of like the catalyst of other people who, with their distorted views, share their distorted views, and they may be surprising to you. And then you can forgive and love and accept them too. All right. I guess if there's no final remarks, anyone? Otherwise, Czar can do the outro.
All right.
Okay.
We end this session and are grateful to the audience. In this teaching experiment, we have attempted to learn a topic as a social memory complex that is unified, harmonious, and full of unconditional love, which characteristics are extremely important to us because we resonate with the Confederation philosophy and believe we are, as humanity, forming and becoming a loving, unified, and harmonious social memory complex from planet Earth. We thank the Confederation and LL Research. If you'd like to support LL Research, you can go to their website at llresearch.org to donate and or buy their books and other material. However, all LL Research material is free at their website. We hope this teaching experiment will give one knowledge that will help one see the love in the moment, will help one open their heart more and more clearly see the unity of all. We thank you all for viewing, and please know that we love each other and you dearly. At this time, we leave you as we found you, in the love and light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.